What is it about the Filipino culture that we all can learn from or be reminded of, especially during this polarized world? Like we say in our colloquial language, kanya-kanya. We're not understanding each other. So here are three things that are, I think, so wonderful about the Filipino culture, and I just want to emphasize it. First is that we are what we call co-regulators. Um, in the field of psychology or in healing, we say we self-regulate, we self-soothe, and that's a great idea. It's a good practice. We therapists always teach that. But at the same time, especially with children, we cannot just teach our children to self-regulate away. Their brains and bodies are not yet fully developed. Certainly, we want to teach them enough to self-soothe, to calm themselves down. Filipinos, I'm talking about mainly Filipinos in the motherland, are co-regulators, which means they are more comfortable being with another person, group of people, to find soothing within themselves. There's a lot of reasoning when it comes to this, even just our systems of care. In the Western world, there is a shorter time. Usually, of course, not everything is all things, and not everyone is everyone. So just making sure that when I share this, you understand. So in the West, mothers, even though they want to take care of their children, sometimes have to leave their children in a more formal type of setting, like, daycare, or even just leaving a child maybe with the auntie or the grandma. Now, there is still a difference. In the Philippines, people who are affluent would have their yaya. Now, in the global city, if you're familiar in the metropolitan area, I hear there's more daycares there that are very similar to the daycares we have here in the West, all day and usually drop off kids. But that's not customary just yet. That just started. In general, children spend a lot more time in their home. They might have a lot of informal caregivers. And so there is no rush really for a child to self-regulate right away, to self-soothe, which is essential if you're leaving your child in the daycare. Otherwise, it won't be comfortable for your child to be crying the whole day while you're working, and it's probably not comfortable for you as a parent. So there is a teaching based on what's socially appropriate, what is adaptive in every culture. It's more adaptive in the West to self-regulate um, younger. In a collective culture like the Philippines, we kind of take our time. Um, just now in the modern times that we're thinking about, our potty training, but before that, just we just allow our children to get to that space when they're ready, because there's so many what we call cooperative breeding. There's so many surrogate parents. Could be even the yaya, but there might be the lola. So that's one that is beautiful, and obviously anything that's so beautiful done in the extreme has a shadow side. But what you can learn from Filipinos being co-regulators is that they know they can depend on another person. They might not always articulate it. That's why I talk a lot about pakikiramdam. This is attunement, is because sometimes they would wait for someone to ask, even though they're like really itchy to ask for help. With co-regulation, it is not just the quality of time, which is usually we hear, well, I don't have a lot of time, but when I spend time with my children, it's quality time. There is a case for quantity, and with quantity, you learn how to co-regulate. So that's the first one. Second, Filipinos are circular in the way they communicate versus, I talk a lot about this. If you haven't listened to the podcast, Pinoy Love Language, I will link that below. Take a listen. I talk about a lot of nuances in the Filipino and Filipino American culture that we rarely hear about. In America, it's very linear, very visual, very evidence-based. In the motherland, we talk very circular, in a circular manner. Lots of sensory words and adjectives. That's why I shared that when you hear the word pangit, in America, it's very just visual. Someone's appearance is pangit or ugly, and it would offend people, as you can understand why. But in the Philippine lexicon, there's a lot more sensorial meanings. Okay, you can say pangit ang amoy, something does not smell good. Pangit ang dating, the energy is not good. Pangit sa pakiramdam, to the touch, and so on and so forth. In general, Filipinos are not easily offended by these because they understand there are different meanings around it. But because of the globalization of social media, what I noticed that many more Filipinos are taking the meaning from the Western meaning, even from Filipino Americans, the way their experience. So just know that there's a variation of experience. The culture in America would not be completely fit in the motherland and vice versa. But what we can learn from that is that there's a benefit of doubt when somebody's talking. Ano ba talagang ibig sabihin nila? What did they really mean? Because when we talk, it's more circular and there's other points of meaning rather than the very linear Western or English lexicon. So that's the second one. The third one is Filipinos really value education. Now, I don't mean just education like consuming information, but more education as far as like critical thinking. Now, you might say, yeah, they just pass on information. To me, as a kid, we're just memorizing. Sometimes the rigor of education gives you a system of kind of way of thinking. And so with that, I hope that you've learned a little bit of critical thinking. I'm not saying all the Filipinos in the motherland are, honing that skill, but at least there's the value for education, for common sense. And I hope that's still common these days. So what we can learn about that is that things are always changing. Information's just always, giving us different data that we need to learn to accommodate new ideas, not just different personas, and um, to diversify our experience. So let me just summarize. When I do these videos, I don't have a script. I just have a note like 1, 2, 3. So let me see. First one, what we can learn from Filipinos are their co-regulators. There's always again, a shadow side to that, but they are comfortable leaning on the other person. We're very collective in that way. Next, there's a circular way that we communicate. And so if you are not just going and learning from social media, which is really coming from the Western world, most of the time Filipinos are not easily offended by just certain phrases. They think first, what does that mean? Because especially when you're using the Filipino language or another dialect, if we speak, there's multi-layers around it. So we wonder first. Next, education, the value of education, the value of thinking things through. And that's also, there's a shadow side of that where people are families that are not the richest in the Philippines. They spend a lot of time working just so to send their children to a good school. And then what happens is there's no place for employment. So there's a shadow side when it comes to that. But I'm just highlighting our valuing education. With that, we value our teacher in general. Even if you go to a more impoverished area, if you're a teacher, most of the time they are at least respected by their position. I hope this serves you well and emphasize there's something about the Filipino culture that's just deeply generous. And during this polarized times, we can pull from that and remember that that's available, whether you're Filipino or not, just exposure to those value system. Again, this is Roanne, the DSMO's licensed psychotherapist. If you'd like to join my weekly love notes, I'll drop the link, and you basically just kind of get a little note and personal with me, almost a weekly love notes. Take good care. Maraming salamat at ingat. Bye.